Roads in Unreal Engine. I'm currently creating a city for my Broker Tycoon game, and we have some nice houses and we also got some roads which connect these houses, but they are not that good. Sidewalks are missing, they got no road marking, and once we add some junctions they get really messy. Which is why I decided I need a road network system, because I tried it with the spline system of Unreal Engine and I did not really like it, and it's very complicated to create junctions and the workflow just takes forever. And since we are creating a city in our game, we need a road system which allows us to have a little faster workflow. So what does our road system actually need? I think we need a road system which is procedurally generated and you just have to connect the roads, and when there are junctions they get assigned automatically. The road markings should be assigned automatically and the sidewalk and the road itself should be continuous, because you can drive games in our car. You can drive cars in our game, and for that the road has to be smooth, because if we have some edges, some weird spots on our road, you are just going to go flying when driving over them. And in addition to that, because I like procedural things, I also want to add a little feature which allows us to place some traffic lights automatically, some bins, some street lights around the map, but still allows the user to replace them manually, so you can design it but you don't have to place everything by hand. And to ensure that the road actually looks good, we also have to take care of the road aligning itself with the landscape, or the landscape aligning itself with the road, so the road is not flying around in the map. So to sum it up, we need some 3D assets, some road modules with the correct textures, for straight streets, for different junctions, and we need some props like the street lights, traffic lights, bins, etc. We need the calculation to align the road modules together and know where junctions should be and how the road should be bent so everything looks nice. We need the calculation to align the road to the landscape beneath, and the system which will then scatter the props around the street. Okay, the first step was to acquire the 3D assets, and for that I simply hit up Steensman from Barcodev, because I'm very bad at 3D art, and he created some street assets for me and a lot of props like bins, street lights, traffic lights and mailboxes and just some other things we could scatter around the map, which was nice. So that's already checked off the list and I could go straight ahead and take care of the calculation to align the road modules together and to create a good looking street system. So, I'm not trying to convince you I did everything by myself. I obviously consulted my favorite consultant, aka Claude, and tried to work out a system. And my first instinct, my first approach was to use splines. Because in the normal Unreal Editor road tool, you're also using splines. But I had the problem that I got the idea a little bit wrong. Because in my version, every single road on the map had its own spline. The splines were not connected. And my idea was that one road goes from A to B and another road goes from C to D. And once they intersect, at the intersection should be added a junction. But I obviously had to implement some tolerance, because the intersections, the splines will not be exactly on the same Z coordinate, which is why then the junction had to be placed between the two splines, and it also had to be calculated how the junction module is bent, so every corner of the road is attached correctly without jumps. And that turned out to be a huge problem, because the intersection, the junction, only had a specific space to be bent, and it basically always led to there being jumps, except the splines were on the exact same Z coordinate. But that's not really the point of a procedural street system if you have to take care of the Z coordinate. And besides that, there was another problem, because in the first approach I tried to deform the landscape to the road and not align the road to the landscape, and that also looked very bad, because in real life when a road is built, obviously there is some terraforming, but the road is still aligned to the landscape which is already there. So I thought, let's do it the other way around in the next approach. So to sum up the learnings from that approach, first, the junction meshes are too small to be bent correctly, the street should be aligned to the landscape, and the splines should be not disconnected from each other. The whole road network should be one spline which is simply connected to each other. And here's my second approach, and it already worked a lot better because I made some major changes after some brainstorming with Claude. First of all, I switched out the road modules, which we already had, to some procedural geometry. So all you are doing now to create the road is assign some variables and materials from which the road modules will then be created. So the junctions and the road itself is now completely procedural. It's not based on a mesh anymore. It just gets created through some rules which you can define in data assets. And that not only fixed the jumps near the junctions, it also gave some more capabilities when designing the road. You can calibrate how wide the road should be, you can calibrate if there should be a sidewalk, you can calibrate how large the sidewalk should be, which means you can now actually design your road network by assigning those data assets to the paths between two street points. And that just made designing the whole road network a lot easier and fixed a lot of problems. So no more meshes, procedural mesh generation was the way, but that only works in low poly-ish styles, I think, because when assigning materials which are more fancy and have some depth maps, etc., the tiling is really bad and the transitions are not as smooth. But since we are making a low poly-ish game, it works very good for us. In addition to that, as you can see, the editor now looks very different. It looks a little bit more intuitive, user-friendly. And that's because I decided to not use an actor in the level, but rather create a whole new editor slot in the Unreal editor where you also have your selection mode, your landscape mode, painting mode, whatever. I added one for the roads, which provides some tools which allows you to create the whole road network. And to ensure that the road network always makes sense, I created some restrictions. So you have these street points you can add, and you can add a max of 4 other street points to these points, which makes sure that the limit is a cross section and you can't create sections with 5 roads going off of it because there's no creation for that and that would just look buggy. And to still have the procedural character, I added the feature that when an intersection happens, like in the first approach, a street point is just added. So when creating the level, you do not have to take care of creating a street point at every junction. You can just pull a road above the other road and a cross section will happen there. And regarding the landscape problem we had before, I now made sure that you can't put the street point anywhere else on the z-axis than on the landscape, so it already is aligning itself to the landscape. The only downside to that is when you have very steep angles on your landscape and try to create a road there, it looks a little bit weird, but I think that's just design decisions, and normally you would not have a very steep road because no car can drive there. And when you want to create bridges, I added the functionality that you can still calibrate the z-axis of some points when you really need it, but the default option is that it aligns itself to the landscape. There were some minor bugs which appeared through the way of making it, like some gaps on curves and so on, but that was fixed really easily. And after I fixed all of this, I was able to create a road network really fast, which looked very nice. And I could even switch out some parts to a wider street for like a highway thing. And it just worked very good. I tried to drive around it with an Unreal car and it worked without going flying anywhere because there were no jumps in the whole street. I'm satisfied with how the road network works at the moment. So now it's time to add some props which are getting scattered around the map automatically. As said in the beginning, we already have some props we want to scatter around the street, so I simply added a button which allows you to generate some props next to the street, like traffic lights, street lights, you name it. And that worked right away because the coordinates of the street are known to the generator. The width of the street is known to the generator due to it not being a mesh but procedurally generated. And yeah, it was just one button click away, and you can scatter around your props. And you can still delete them, move them around if you don't want them where the generator placed them. So it's still humanly designable, which is very important. But yeah, designing the map just got way easier, and you don't have to place like 100 props by hand. And that sums up the road network we created for our broker tycoon. It was quite a journey to get here. Unfortunately, I did not record everything while creating it, and obviously I worked a lot with AI, so it kind of was like a black box thing. But I'm very satisfied with how it turned out. I'm excited to now create the map using that road network. The system for the buildings is still missing because they are still clipping through the ground, and perhaps we need a system for parking lots, but we'll see when it's time for that. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like if so, subscribe to the channel, join our Discord, and have a nice day.